All right. Hello, hello.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
We're back for another episode. It's another week. We got another show. And we have some things to talk. Are you looking at your hair there, Scott? Your hair's looking fly.
I'm
It's
trying
looking
to make
fly.
sure I look decent on camera.
Yeah, your hair is looking fly. All right. Is that still a word?
Yeah, for guys our age, it is.
So, something new has hit the airwaves, and we're going to talk about that thing. What are we talking about today, Mr. Wilson?
We're talking about the season premiere of The Mandalorian, season 3 premiere to be exact.
Season 3. And it's interesting how they refer to them in chapters. So each episode is a chapter. And so the first two seasons were, season 1 was chapter 1 through 8, season 2, chapter 9 through 16, season 3, chapter 17. And The Mandalorian is a show that, to me, just keeps getting better. I think I mentioned to you early on when I first started watching The Mandalorian, I liked it. There was nothing I did not like about it. But my only complaint, if I could say, was that in season 1 especially, it seemed like every episode just kind of wrapped up with a bow on it. And it was just, and it felt a little kind of ABC after school special where, it was a happy ending, there were no cliffhangers, and it was just, that was really my only complaint. Now season 2, went in a lot more directions, and now we even had a season 2.5, which was a couple of episodes in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett. In my opinion, that was the only redeeming thing in that Boba Fett season. But here we are now in season 3, and season 3 in one episode, and in a short episode, gave us a lot.
Okay, just for the long and short of it for me is, I was entertained by this episode. I wasn't really impressed. Now, before it sounds like I'm gonna crap all over, and I'm not. Like I said, I was entertained, but I'm used to, with The Mandalorian, the last 2 seasons, the season openers grabbed me right from jump. This one kind of didn't, because it didn't really. We're not even really into the story yet. It's kind of a lot of setup. I'm thinking that might be the case because a lot of this was originally set up in Book of Boba Fett. What the Mandalorian is going to have to do, he's going to have to redeem himself. Spoiler alert,
Right.
But I'm assuming, most Star Wars fans, you've probably already watched all these shows, even if you don't like all of them. So you're probably caught up. But a lot of the current trajectory of The Mandalorian was set up in the Book of Boba Fett, in those sort of Mandalorian 2.5 episodes, a lot of people are calling them now.
Right.
That kind of ended up in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett. So I guess maybe they felt they had to sort of repeat that for people who may not have watched Book of Boba Fett. They probably had to have this episode just sort of restate the setup for those who didn't watch Book of Boba Fett but probably watched The Mandalorian.
Okay.
Don't watch every Star Wars show.
Okay.
Because nothing really happens in this episode. It's just sort of like, okay, the preliminaries before he goes on this mission that we already know he's going to go on. So, I like the little short, cute mechanic alien thingies.
Yeah.
They were working on the droid.
And they were in the sequel movies. They were the ones that helped erase C-3PO's brain.
I remember.
For him to unlock the Sith translations or something like that. So just kind of tying together all the past and present continuity.
I like the idea of that little outpost that Carl Weathers is stationed at now.
Yeah.
It's sort of this. There's a lot more money flowing through there, and he's becoming legitimate. And I like the idea of how he has to contend with.
Kind of reminded me of Lando Calrissian in a little bit.
Yeah.
Very similar echoing of that. Like, we have, with success comes challenges. And
Well, the challenges come from the fact that these guys weren't exactly legitimate. They didn't come up through legitimate means. So
right.
Now which is an interesting commentary itself on politics, and just it's kind of like the guys that you used to work with who did dirty work for you in the past, or who you may have had to deal with in the past. They're kind of looking at you saying, "Hey, we know you've come up, but look,
right.
But this is everything isn't okay. You still have to deal with us." And,
right.
That's interesting. Of course, I'm always happy to see Grogu. or even though for some reason Grogu seems to look a little bit more obviously a puppet. So in this episode than other ones, I'm not sure why. It may just because I'm not used. It's been a while since
we've seen it.
Yeah. So that might be it. I'm just sort of, I'm hoping, because one thing bugs me, but this isn't with the show itself. There's one thing that's bugged me. I noticed that this season of The Mandalorian seems to have arrived with very little fanfare and hype on the part of Disney, because the first two seasons, Disney let you know, they spared no expense to let you know this is coming and the date is coming on and you got to get Disney Plus to watch it. And this time I didn't even know this week I didn't even know that The Mandalorian was premiering this week. I just somebody posted a trailer and I happened to look it up online and said, oh, it's coming out this Wednesday. That's very strange to me. That's very strange on Disney's part.
Okay, I remember seeing teasers for it. But again, I don't watch a lot of stuff. Well, I'm going to just. You mentioned it didn't really start off in any specific way, but I feel like it did, because when we see the woman forging the piece of armor, who was the same one who forged some of Mando stuff in season 1, then you see her come out with that helmet, and you see a kid there, kind of being baptized into the Mandalorian creed. It was almost being set up like a flashback. So for a minute, you're thinking, oh, this is Mando when he first became Mando. At least that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking this is a flashback because this is all the Mandalorians. And they talked about in the season, they had a little wrap-up. Or, before the episode started, they gave you a quick little wrap-up of different scenes. And one of the scenes, she was saying the only way you can redeem yourself is to bathe in the waters. And then here you see a kid bathing in waters. So I thought the opening was a flashback. That's how it kind of came across to me.
I can see that.
And it was a good opening sequence. It starts off seeming like this really rich tradition. And then we have this giant alligator with a turtle back jumping out of the water. And you get to see just a whole squad of Mandalorians in action. Just doing what they do with their jetpacks and their guns and everything else. I felt the opening was pretty strong. And then, of course, me starting off thinking it's a flashback, and then you see that Naboo fighter, which he kind of pimped out in season 2, kind of come in and save the day. I thought all of that was a really epic way to kick the episode off, just to say, look, I'm here, bitches. And not only am I here, but I just saved all your asses.
Right. Actually, I think that was pimped out in the
or was in the Boba Fett? See, that's where I'm getting confused.
I remember online, I've seen some reactions like, "Oh, where did he get this new ship?" And I'm like, that's when I realized everybody didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, or didn't finish it anyway.
Gotcha.
So,
but honestly, I was never blown away by the Naboo fighters in episode 1. They didn't strike me as really cool ships like X-Wings did. X-Wings had a very industrial look. It felt like it was the lineage of an earthbound aircraft. You know what I mean? It felt like a plane. It just felt like a plane that would fly in space. It felt very real and organic. Everything about all the architecture and design for Naboo, there was this very elegant city. So those Naboo fighters didn't, to me, have any Star Wars-y DNA in their design. They were too artsy. So I was never impressed with those Naboo starfighters. But having Mando have a junkyard version one that he kind of pimped my ride, and it's got no paint on it and it's missing pieces. It's like, that's a hood rat car now, you know? And so I kind of like his Naboo fighter, and it was cool to see him kind of save the day. And then it was disappointing, but I guess realistic, where even though I don't know what the woman's name is, I'll call her the forgestress because she forges with her hammer and stuff. She's like, yeah, you may have saved me, but you're still not one of us because you broke the creed.
Well, she's
sticking to the creed.
Yeah.
Right. So so the way it opened, I felt was pretty strong. And once he makes it to Carl Weathers' planet, where he says, I got to meet a friend, and you can see that this whole renaissance has happened. In that one scene where he's kind of going through the town, there are so many Easter eggs, and there's so much to watch. You would have to almost freeze every frame. It's almost like the reveal, the first time we get the reveal of the Mos Eisley spaceport. There's so many things going on there. There was just a huge reveal. You got to see a guy who looked like Who's the guy that says it's a trap?
Admiral Akbar.
Admiral Akbar. You got to see one of his species there walking through the streets. You got to see lots of protocol droids. The Salacious Crumb or Sidious Crumb guy.
You see a bunch of them
who sits on Jabba's shoulders. A bunch of those in a tree.
I don't know what the name of the creature is.
Yeah, I don't either. But there were, and then so this
or the species rather.
Yeah. So I almost feel like you would have needed to freeze frame that to see them. I'm sure there was just so many Easter eggs of that. Seeing his protocol droid that had like the body of C-3PO, but almost like the face of a Death Star droid. That was kind of cool in a different voice. Seeing IG-11's statue there on a pile of stormtrooper helmets, like I just saved the day, bitches, and beneath me are the skulls of my enemies that I've crushed. That was in town square. That was kind of cool. Seeing Katee Sackhoff again as I can't remember her name of her character from the animated series, but seeing her again was good. And I thought the pirates were okay. It was neat. I mean, because the whole thing is kind of like the whole duel where they're getting ready to draw their guns. Everything about Mandalorian has been like a gunslinger Wild West show.
Well, that was. I mean, I liked it, but it's just we've seen that bit kind of a few times in this show, so I wasn't really as excited. Not that it's bad, but it's just we've seen that beat played out. Yeah.
Nothing new. Right.
That's what I'm waiting on. I'm thinking
something
that this quest that he's going on, I'm thinking they're going to show us some different things. Or I'm hoping they're going to show us some different things. But one thing I'm wondering, and this is something that in the local comic shop I frequent, Collector's Comics, there's a guy that I happen to be friends with a few of those guys over there, and one of them said something to me that I'm wondering if, excuse me, if this is going to play out. Because I know Kevin Feige has recently mentioned he thinks there's probably a glut of Marvel content on Disney Plus right now, and so it sounds like he's going to be scaling back a bit. And I'm thinking that there seems to be some financial upheaval or some kind of upheaval going on with Disney. I think that Disney Plus lost subscribers, a certain amount of subscribers for the first time late last year. One of those financial reports, just come in and they've lost a certain amount of subscribers or something, and basically it seems like the whole streaming thing isn't panning out. Not just Disney, it seems like across the board. Because I know Netflix for the first time, sometime last year, they said that they lost a significant amount of subscribers for the first time. So I think people are kind of starting to see the shine is starting to come off.
Is the bubble gonna burst?
Yeah, because I've often wondered how, or the Mandalorian, these shows and these Marvel shows, I think they cost almost $200 million a season. I heard in some cases,
which is like the cost of making a movie.
Yeah, but it's like, how are they a movie generates money through the ticket sales,
right?
And things of that nature. But and movies are streamed on different platforms, whereas the Disney Plus content, it's exclusive, like the Mandalorian, that's exclusive to them. Well, after you pay the initial subscription fee, how do they make money on, say, a Mandalorian episode?
So it's just it's got to be the numbers of subscribers they have. However many millions of subscribers at $15 or whatever it is per month, or you add all that up, that's their monthly income, and then they got to budget that.
So I'm wondering if moving forward, since the Mandalorian, the Mandalorian is initially the show that drove subscribers to Disney Plus in the beginning.
Yes,
that's pretty much their flagship show.
And if anything, the Book of Boba Fett might have drove them away.
maybe. I mean, but I'm sort of wondering if moving forward, if the Mandalorian is going to end up doing a lot more heavy lifting than anticipated. Because now that if Disney is planning on scaling back the amount of content for their different, for Lucasfilm and then Marvel, and if they're thinking of scaling back, and I can't see them letting go of the Mandalorian for any reason, will Mando end up sort of doing more of the heavy lifting, whereas a lot of the ideas that might have gone into these other shows now, and the character appearances that might have happened on other shows now, are going to all be sort of redirected to Mando You know, and is that going to overload the show? Because one thing that this guy at Collectors Comics mentioned to me is that what he liked about The Mandalorian is it kind of felt like almost on the outskirts of the main Star Wars continuity, but as time goes on, more and more of just the regular Star Wars continuity is being brought to bear on the show. You know, as far as it's Luke making an appearance, Boba Fett making an appearance,
Right.
you know, so...
Yeah, a lot of that feels a little bit like fan service, but I haven't really complained too much about it. What I did like about Mandalorian, especially when it started off in season 1, is it really, the whole show was kind of like a fish out of water, but it was also a fish in familiar water because he was swimming in the same waters that the entire Star Wars universe has taken place in, so there was a lot of familiarity, but it wasn't strictly fan service. And that was refreshing. It was a Star Wars story that took place kind of on its own legs. So I did like that about the show. And then as it went on, and as season 2 went on, and season 2.5, they have been slowly integrating things like you mentioned, the young Luke Skywalker. They're now bringing in from the Clone Wars animated series some of those characters into live action, which is now, not that they were never canon, but they've switched from just animated canon to now live action canon. So they're bringing some of that stuff in, which for fans, I'm sure is great. If you were a fan of the Clone Wars, which I never really watched, and you get to see some of those, iconic characters on, in live action in this current setting, I'm sure the fans were to the moon. Me not having that context, the fact that they were there, and even like Ahsoka, whatever her name is, right? So Anakin's Padawan, her being in there. So they're bringing, and she's getting her own series supposedly too, right? So I think it's the Mandalorian has been the gateway for more live action. I think because of its success, they certainly wanted to do Obi-Wan. And you and I have talked about Obi-Wan, and we've kind of have mixed feelings about it, genuinely positive. But so yeah, the future of Disney live action streaming, and again, we talked about Rogue One and Andor. Andor was great Star Wars because there were stormtroopers, but there weren't Jedis. There wasn't an emperor. There wasn't Darth Vader. It was real political and kind of regional struggles going on. That was good. That was great Star Wars. That was great live action. Mandalorian has given us a lot of that, but the Mandalorian is very PG, almost leaning to the left towards G, whereas Andor is more like PG 17.
A little bit towards R in some cases.
Yeah, so a little bit more grittier, a little bit more grounded. But no, as far as this first season, this first episode of season 3, a lot. It was, like you say, it was entertaining. What did you think of the pirates? Just the whole idea of the space pirates, and then the big space pirate ship, and the captain kind of looking like the guy from the Johnny Depp movies with the seaweed hanging from the seaweed that was kind beard.
That character, it looked like practical effects, or I might be wrong.
Makeup, yeah.
But it almost had like a Sid and Marty Krofft kind of look to it, almost to me.
What was the name of the guy in the Pirates of the Caribbean one that had like all the little octopus stuff?
Davy Jones.
Davy Jones, right? So he was kind of like Davy Jones in space,
Yeah, there was something kind of startling about that. I mean, and also like another thing that's kind of a little bit jarring, and I'm wondering if this is just simply because Mando kind of had a longer, a bit of a longer hiatus between seasons 2 and 3 than between seasons 1 and 2. And also, coming after Andor, because the tone of Andor, the pacing was deliberate, the tone was a lot more dark and dank and oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bit more. It was an adult Star Wars show. I put that in quotation marks.
Right.
But it's just it's a bit more of an intense tone than Star Wars has ever had. So coming back to The Mandalorian, it almost feels a little jarring, like Mando kind of feels relatively lighthearted, which I wouldn't necessarily have called the show lighthearted before, but yeah, and it's
compared to Andor.
yeah,
Yes.
and Andor kind of has reminded me of because The Mandalorian is very much in the tradition of Star Wars in that it's very much an adventure serial. It has the feeling of an old adventure serial, and it's very much based in sort of the samurai mythology and movies that inspired Lucas because it's Lone Wolf and Cub.
Right.
For those who know what Lone Wolf and Cub is, Baby Cart in Peril, or if you've read the mangas or seen it in the movies from the 70s, there was I don't know if you've seen those.
Who knows?
Yeah,
I'm old. I forget things. So.
well, no, but well, if you haven't, anybody who hasn't, look up Lone Wolf and Cub. It was a manga series in Japan, and in the 70s, I think it was. They did a series of movies about them, a whole series of films. It's this sort of a disgraced samurai who used to be the shogun's executioner, and the shogun tried to have him killed. If I remember the story correctly, his wife died, so he made some sort of a dark pledge, and he takes his baby son with him, and he's sort of just a ronin, a masterless samurai. And he wanders with his child in a baby cart, and the baby cart is booby trapped with deadly booby traps, and this guy just kind of hacks people to pieces. He's sort of like the man with no name. He gets into adventures, he takes on jobs, he does things, and there's sort of this kind of unsettling but fascinating theme where the child witnesses all this carnage and in some cases participates. And you're never really sure how it impacts the kid, but it just makes for a very fascinating viewing. Two of the movies were edited together in 1980 and released under the title Shogun Assassin. And they I forget who did it, but the people behind this sort of fusion of those two movies, they added a synthesizer scores in 1980, and famously that movie was sampled for one of the Wu-Tang Clan's solo albums, Liquid Swords by GZA. But if Steve, anybody listening, if you've never seen anything dealing with Lone Wolf and Cub, look it up. Watch the movies or read the manga, and The Mandalorian makes a lot more sense in that context. But getting back to my original point, and to wrap my long-winded point up, yes, The Mandalorian is very much in the tradition of the pure tradition of Star Wars, but Andor's kind of reminded me. It kind of slapped me in the face with it. Yeah, Star Wars is a kid's property very much, because now coming back to it, I'm like, after being immersed in Andor, it's like, wow, this seems lighthearted, much more lighthearted than I remember. Well, no, that's what Star Wars has always been.
Right.
So,
right. Although in the first trilogy, there was the Act 2, which was The Empire Strikes Back, and that one did end on a cliffhanger, and that was kind of dark. So there has been some darkness in Star Wars, but not quite to the shade of Rogue One and Andor, which made them some of my more favorite ones, because as an adult, they speak more to me on adult themes and adult levels. But yeah, in summary, I would definitely say the season 1 of episode 3 of The Mandalorian is starting off well for me. We know what his mission is, right? His mission is to redeem himself and be brought back into the creed, because right now he's kind of absconded because he admitted that he had to lift off his helmet, and you're not supposed to remove your helmet. They have basically abandoned him. And so now he's trying to win back those graces, and he's trying to make his way back to Mandalore to find the waters of life, which are underneath the mines, and bathe in those so he can be, based on the creed, brought back into the creed. And that's where we're going, and that's kind of how things started off. I felt the Easter eggs of all the various species, seeing them in there was nice, especially like you mentioned, the little droid makers. Those droid makers were the ones that I just remember from the sequels, Star Wars 7, 8, and 9, that they were working on C-3PO when he had to have his brain wiped. So to see those again was kind of cute, as opposed to the kind of pigmen that took C-3PO apart in The Empire Strikes Back with Lando, right? So these are like little mini pigmen that work on droids, but they're cute, right? And the other thing I liked was, you mentioned Grogu seemed like a puppet at points, especially when he was being thrown, when Mando threw him over to shoot the droid, which, by the way, IG-11, big fan of IG-11. But the personality of Grogu was seen many times when he's trying to like hug those little pig droid makers and stuff, and he's using the Force to like pull M&Ms from the bowl, and like a kid, he's in a big chair. Let me just spin around in circles, wee wee wee, just doing like what a kid would do. So, his Baby Yoda Grogu personality, I felt, was very prominent, and which transcends the fact that we know he's a puppet, but he's behaving like a little kid would, and I felt all those moments of the Grogu-ness of him were good.
But one thing about that is also, not that I'm not glad to see them reunited, but part of me kind of feels like at the end of the second season, when Luke was taking Grogu away, and it was very emotional, and I kind of thought, I always knew they'd be reunited, but I was kind of hoping that part of this season would be showing Mando have to deal with the fact that he became attached to what was supposed to be an asset, as he always with the asset.
Right.
So in that sense, he also broke part of the code. He became personally involved in a job, and having to deal with the fallout, the emotional fallout from that. That now you don't have this asset that effectively became your child. You became a father by taking on this asset, and now you don't have that anymore. I was hoping we would deal with that a bit, and also like it just kind of, part of me kind of feels like that's almost a wasted beat now. That whole emotional, separation. It kind of almost feels like a wasted beat. But because I'm looking at it now, I'm kind of thinking to myself, wait a minute, these two characters kind of, in a way, in a sense, it almost feels like they outgrew each other, or should have outgrown each other, because there was a big change happened. But I have to remind myself of two things. One, I don't know what the fan response would be if this was just Mando by himself and no more Grogu.
Right, because Grogu was kind of the whole nucleus of Mando's journey from the beginning.
Right, and I'm also, not sure. We don't know. I don't know what's coming.
Right.
There may be something in the season that shows, okay, yeah, it's not my responsibility to keep you like this. You have your own path. Maybe that will happen later.
Right.
On.
Well, they seem to be both mutually attached to each other. Like Grogu's sitting in Mando's lap when he's flying. Like getting under his seatbelt and stuff. There's definitely a mutual attachment there. Another thing, speaking of them flying, but when they were flying through hyperspace, did you see like the space squids and the space whales in the clouds?
That was, and I'm wondering, are those things flying fast, or do you enter some sort of other dimension when you're in hyperspace?
Yeah, so I don't know that we've seen that before in the live action. I'm not sure if it's been portrayed in all the plethora of animated stuff, because I'm behind on all the animated series. But I don't recall seeing. Now, Star Trek deals with this. Star Trek and The Next Generation, all these things have dealt with like sentient space whales and space creatures that live out in space. But this is the first time that I can recall seeing it in the Star Wars, where first you just kind of see one, and it looks like a squid, and it's kind of blurry, and it's like a shadow behind the light that's flying
and
past them.
It doesn't look like it's moving fast.
Well, it looks like it's moving along with them.
Yeah.
You can see that they're moving very fast because the light's flying by them, but it seems like it's almost motionless next to them. At first you think it's just one squid. Well, what's up? Is this squid following them? And then when they kind of pan back, you get to see that. And that squid was easily as big as the Naboo fighter. Well, this squid is now part of a colony of other ones, and there's a big one that looks kind of like a whale. So there's this whole pod of whales and squid-like things floating through hyperspace while they're beaming through their little tunnel. That was this kind of cool visual thing.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what, if anything, because I'm guessing maybe we'll see that again. And also just the last little note on the attachment between Grogu and. I forget the Mandalorian's actual name.
Din Djarin or Din Djarin.
As we all know, according to what we've seen in just about every Star Wars movie so far, attachments are never a good thing. So, no, but seriously, attachments are what led to Anakin becoming Darth Vader, so to speak. And the Jedi Council is highly against, allowing children to develop, children who are strong with the Force to develop attachments.
Right, they didn't want Anakin to fall in love and things like that, right? Because you need to be in control of your emotions.
So, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm guessing at some point, because I think I heard Dave Filoni and the other guys say that they don't have any big ending planned. But like I said, we'll see. It's too early to make any of these judgments. So we'll see how that goes. But
Well, it was a good 40 minutes,
Yeah.
38 minutes, whatever it was. It was a short episode. It's kicking the season off. Definitely, we know what his path is. We know right now he is trying to redeem himself and get back in good with the Mandalorians. What's the Phantom Menace of this season? Is it going to be Davy Jones, the pirate with the seaweed beard? Is he going to be the bad guy? That would be kind of disappointing. But what's the conflict this season? We'll find out, right? Because every hero needs a conflict, right? If hero needs a villain, story needs conflict, needs a struggle, there there's for to be a resolution, right? But yeah, I enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, go see it, watch it, and I'm looking forward to more. Matter of fact, I almost feel like I want to rewatch seasons 1 and 2 because it's been so long. It's been so long since I've seen them, and it's not quite fresh in my mind. They did give you a nice little kind of summary right before the episode started, but I'm sure there's a lot more I could rewatch to fill in some blanks, make things more fresh in my mind. So in conclusion, would you give Mandalorian Season 3 episode a thumbs up?
I give it a thumbs up, but I will say I'm hoping for more as the season progresses, because this did kind of feel like a sort of a way station for me in a way. Like it sort of felt like we're not really.
We were in purgatory.
Yeah, we're not really moving, because the thing about the Mandalorian that I always associate with it is movement. It's always moving, and this is the first time I felt kind of. But like I said, maybe they have to establish things for people who, some of the more casual fans who don't consume every single Star Wars thing that shows up on Disney Plus. So.
Is there such thing as a casual Star Wars fan? Is that an oxymoron?
I think there are, but I think that they are much younger than we are.
Okay.
I think that as Star Wars ages and gets older, I think that's with anything. You'll get people who are younger people who weren't alive for the original craze, and
right.
It's not
Right.
as strong.
So the context is not applicable for them. Yeah. Okay. So do we want to move on to some other things and news and whatnot? I will just say one of the segments we do is called How Did You Geek This Week, and what did you work on? The one project that I've worked on, and if you have time after the show, I can show you, but I've been working on this Windows 98 machine. It's been a little project. I've posted a couple of 2-3 videos on it. And the last thing I did to that was I actually added a second hard drive and now have Windows XP in there. So I've got a nice vintage old computer in a new shiny box where I can boot between Windows 98 and Windows XP. And I've got a lot of old games I'm looking forward to playing on that. Matter of fact, I'm going down tomorrow to Pompano. I'm in a club. It's called the Florida Retro Computer Club. And I'm going to bring that computer and show it off as my little show and tell piece. Everybody's got old computers like old Apples and Commodores and Ataris and stuff. I'm going to bring my little custom build there. That's been my little pet project I've been beating on for the past few weeks. Anything you mentioned last week? You were watching reading your book about the kind of detective guy that was
Brubaker.
Yeah,
Brubaker, his Reckless series. I'm still reading through it now. I'm reading through his original crime comic, which is called Criminal. The last run it had was through Image Comics. So yeah, I've been checking that out. But yeah, that's still what I'm doing. Tomorrow I'm going to be going to see Creed 3.
Okay. Let me know what you think about that.
One thing I did this past week, I saw Cocaine Bear.
Oh yeah, that's right. You mentioned it at the end of last episode. You mentioned we were going to see that. What did you think of Cocaine? I know you did a write-up on it.
I enjoyed it, but it's the kind of thing. just the title and the trailer should let anybody with half a brain know that it's not suited to all tastes. Like, if you, to me, that is the Cocaine Bear is the kind of movie you're not in that theater by accident. Like, you can't.
Like you were talking about how when you went to see Star Wars in New York and it said all seatings are sold out, but we have other movies, right? It's like I came to see something else. It was sold out, so I'll just watch Cocaine Bear, right?
No, if you came to see, if you came to see,
you saw that
Cocaine
shit
Bear,
on purpose.
Yeah, like that's because like anybody, I'll smack anybody that comes up to me saying, "Oh, it's not what I expected." Seriously, what were you? It's called Cocaine Bear.
Right.
What are you expecting? Like if you see that trailer, it's no, it's entertaining. It's some people have said that it's a 90-minute meme, and it may be that. There are some there's some things in it that's surprisingly well done. It's a little slight, it kind of. But I had to keep reminding myself it's called Cocaine Bear.
Right.
So
right.
What am I going to expect from it? Ice Cube's son is in it. O'Shea Jackson Jr. I think is his name. And he's actually carving out a career for himself. He's not bad in the movie. Ray Liotta, his final on-screen role. He's pretty fun in the movie. I'm just going to say to anybody right now, if you have problems with child imperilment, if you have problems with animal cruelty, if you have problems with those kind of things being sent up and played for laughs, just stay home.
When you say child impairment, you're talking about like putting a child in danger.
Imperilment, yeah.
Imperilment. Okay.
Putting a child in danger. If you have problems with...
Kind of like you say, Shane Black their villain would always use a kid... and not be afraid to threaten to kill the hero's kid.
This would make Shane Black say, "Oh my God!" Like I said, it's just if you've seen the trailers, it's pretty much what you would expect. I've heard some people say they didn't think it went far enough, and I'm not sure what those people wanted.
Well, let me ask you this: would be a spoiler? What I said? Does the bear die in the end? Does the evil Cocaine Bear die in the end? He doesn't die. So is it left open where there could be a sequel, and this could potentially become a franchise?
Perhaps. I mean, it's kind of, to be honest, what this movie is, it's a monster movie but that's also played for laughs. The funny thing is the scene, the kills by the bear they're really gory, and they're not. There's parts of it that are funny, but the way they play it in a way that you really do tense up when someone encounters the bear. So it's kind of I can't imagine this kind of joke working more than once for the people that it does work for, because it's not going to work for everybody. I can't imagine.
You think it's a one-trick pony?
I can't imagine. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows? We'll see.
Right, but you think of like a movie like The Hangover. That first Hangover movie was one that you never would have expected, and they ended up making 3 of them.
and the other 2 weren't worth sitting through in my opinion. But
okay, would you recommend people to see it with all your disclaimers and cautions?
Yeah, I'd recommend to see. If you found anything in the trailer funny, then yeah, I would tell you to go see it. If you looked at that trailer and you were wondering, they actually expect me to pay to see this, stay home. Okay,
fair enough.
So,
and I guess there's one more thing I can add, because I talked about this last week too. But the new Harry Potter game, or it's not a Harry Potter game, but it's called Hogwarts Legacy. It puts you in the world of the Harry Potter books and movies. I've been playing that in my spare time, and it is a lot of fun. You mentioned you're not a Harry Potter fan, or not a big one. My experience has been the movies. I never read the books, but my wife and I have watched the movies many times. We like to quote lines from the movies. I feel like that world that they created was a really cool world, and I'm not a huge fan of it, but I am a fan enough of it to where I enjoy exploring that world in this game. And so for a casual fan to a super fan, you're going to find something in this game that you're going to like. You get to be a student at Hogwarts. You get to explore that whole world around Hogwarts. You get to learn how to do new spells and new things and explore and all kinds of cool stuff. So It's a lot of fun. I typically will get bored with a game or need to take a break from the game after a while. But for going on 2 or 3 weeks now, when I have spare time, I play it and I enjoy it. And I'm to the point now where I can fly around on a broom, and flying on a broom is fun. It's kind of cool now because the walking takes forever, and you can only fast travel once you've gotten somewhere. So you have to slowly get somewhere before you can quickly travel there again. So being able to fly now makes getting to new locations a little bit easier. So I'm enjoying that. We did kind of talk about some of the controversy around that last week. We don't need to rehash that, but I would definitely say if you were curious about it, or if you're on the fence, it's to me it's worth the money. And then I think the last thing we have is a little bit of news. So are you ready to talk a little bit of news, Scott T. Wilson? You can kick it off.
Well, yeah, today the catalog of classic rap group called De La Soul is now available on streaming platforms. It wasn't for a very long time. I think due to legal issues and rights issues and publishing and all that other stuff. Some of it may have been due to, I mean, their catalog is very sample heavy. So I'm not sure if all the samples were cleared, but they were actually innovators in that way of sort of layering samples and like just even taking obscure samples, and they were really artists when it came to that, and how the samples were employed and used in a song and everything else. But anyway, the catalog is available. Their first album, 3 Feet High and Rising, came out in 1989, and that was like a landmark rap album, and it was that was a landmark period for the late 80s is really where rap music began to splinter off into various subgenres and categories, and like they really were trailblazers in that they created an entire lane for rappers that did not fit the stereotypical mold that you would put a rapper in back at that time. They were kind of even referred to themselves derisively as hippies.
Hippie rappers, huh? Free spirits.
Yeah, they were from Long Island, because at that time, New York rappers came from the five boroughs, but these guys came from Long Island, which is very suburban. And interestingly enough, Long Island was in the late '80s was a hotbed of rap talent. Public Enemy is from Long Island, even though Chuck D was originally born in, I think, was it Queens or Brooklyn? He wasn't originally born in Long Island, but you had EPMD. You had there's a list of names. Busta Rhymes got his start out there, but De La was something altogether different. And of course, Trugoy the Dove, he passed, unfortunately, not too long ago at all. And a lot of guys, rap fans my age, have kind of been, a dark cloud has been hanging over us because of that, because of what this group meant. And these guys were just real trailblazers. They also had a way of sort of, some of their songs, the theme was they would criticize rap music and hip hop, what was going on in it, what they thought was bad in it, what they thought was bad for the culture, what they thought was, as the rise of gangster rap, which is actually a misnomer, that term, and I'll get into that on another show, but as the rise of some of certain things that they thought weren't good for the music, they would make songs and have lyrics about it, and even take shots at certain artists, and they were kind of very bold in that way. And it was if you ever want to see examples of sort of this kind of introspective side of hip hop where rappers critique their own form, those guys kind of were trailblazers in that way as well. And but their whole catalog, I mean, their first two albums were like these the first one was 3 Feet High and Rising, and the second one was called De La Soul is Dead. And that title was them, that album, they were killing the hippie image that sort of they kind of pioneered with the first album, and sort of showing people, you don't know what to expect, don't think you have us in the box, and don't.
Okay.
And as I showed Steve earlier, Spider-Man No Way Home ended with a song, the first song for the end credits, the song that led to the mid-credits scene, the magic number.
3 is which is like a play on Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
And that video very much reminded me of Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah. And then you also had me watch the video, Me, Myself, and I, too, which was kind of... And they look super young. They look like kids.
They were.
But yeah, no, I remember the name De La Soul, and I'm not as much as a historian and as versed as you are, but just based on that kind of backstory you gave me earlier and watching some of those videos, yeah. So on the one hand, it's a win that they're now available on streaming platforms for people who maybe couldn't get them before, because not everybody buys music anymore.
Right.
It used to be we bought physical, and then we go to buying digital, and now it's just streaming. I'll put it in my playlist. And now for those of you who stream, the good news is you can stream De La Soul. The bad news is we've lost one of the members.
Yes.
Right? Which is unfortunate, obviously because we lost a pioneer, and also because now the chance to make some more money is not...
he can't partake.
He can't partake in that, but hopefully maybe his family or his estate can. So yeah, that is but I did, just based on the little history lesson you gave me and some of those videos, yeah, I'm like, yeah, these guys are cool. I remember the name, don't remember all the songs, but yeah, really cool band. Hip-hop band. And the only thing that I'm going to talk about in the news, and then we're going to wrap it up, because the DC Universe, which is what it's now being called, as under the magic reigns of James Gunn. So DC and HBO Max have had a handful of things. And the whole idea that now James Gunn is saying is that now everything is going to be part of the same universe moving forward. What's in the box office theaters, what's on live action streaming, and even what's on animated streaming. All of these things now are in the same universe, part of the same continuity moving forward. And mixed feelings and mixed opinions on Henry Cavill is probably not going to be back as Superman, at least not right away. So not everybody's a fan of that. But we are talking about what are the first two things that we can expect from the DCU. And so one of these is Viola Davis, who played Amanda Waller. And we first saw her in the Suicide Squad movies, and she was kind of like the Nick Cage, or the Nick Fury, right? She was kind of like the person who was running this ragtag group of heroes or anti-heroes. And it's a really cool character. It's kind of a takes no shit, holds no prisoners, pulls no punches. So so she was in the first Suicide Squad movie, the second one. I didn't see Peacemaker or Peacekeeper with John Cena, because to me he was a goofy character in that second Suicide Squad movie. The second Suicide Squad movie was quality entertainment, and it was very humor heavy. And coming from James Gunn, who did things like Guardians of the Galaxy, it was fun to watch. But I didn't take that Peacemaker character seriously. But apparently he's got a whole nother season on HBO that I didn't even watch because I didn't have the interest. But apparently Viola Davis, Amanda Waller, is in there. And so she's going to have a live action series that is kind of following up after the Peacemaker series. So that's one of the first live action ones. Now, James Gunn's brother, whose name is Sean Gunn, he played a character called the Weasel in the second Suicide Squad movie. And there's going to be an animated show called Creature Commandos, where he is going to be the voice of that same character in that show. So those are the first two reported things we're going to see from the DC Universe. Obviously, you and I are both looking forward to seeing the Flash movie, which was filmed way before the takeover and the changes and all the corporate anarchy. But I always say we've got to remain optimistic. I really hope DC finds its footing, finds its voice, finds its path, and blazes one. Actually, this is a good time for them to kind of reboot, because a lot of people feel that Marvel, who was the leader for a long time, it almost feels like they're losing their focus and their footing. And this would be a great time, perfect time to come in and say, yeah, this is a great time to come in and say, hey, we got something strong. Yeah. So always remaining optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Look, I'm much more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but at the same time, at this point, I want to be entertained, and I want to be not just entertained but engaged. because you can be entertained but not necessarily engaged in something. There are movies that are entertaining but not engaging. I would just like, if DC has an alternative, a different way of approaching this kind of material, then now I would say to James Gunn and the suits over at Warner Brothers, now, fellas, now's the time. Pull it out, bring it out.
Yeah. Right, and I think the Flash is going to do that. I think the Flash movie is going to kick the door wide open.
As Jay-Z once famously said, one of his most famous lines: "Bring them out, bring them out."
So I'm going to tell you one thing, Scott T. Wilson. We have a new theme song.
Oh.
And I've heard it, but I'm going to save it for you till it's done. And we're going to get the creators on and talk to them. Okay. So my friend Gordon, whose rapper name is The Gimp, he goes by the name The Gimp.
Good
and
Lord.
His record label is Hallowed Ground Records.
Okay.
He has given us a Culture Goes Pop theme song, and his musical collaborator goes by the name Stagger. So when we get the Gimp and Stagger together, we will do an interview with them to talk about their record label and some of their tracks. And he's got new music too, so maybe we can get some debuts in some of his new tracks. And then we're going to debut our new theme song. And I want you to hear it for the first time and see your live, genuine reaction to it.
Well, any rapper that calls himself the Gimp, I'm interested to hear his lyrical content with that kind of name. Because there's lots of things that come to mind with the name Gimp. Because
short story is, and I've known him since he was like 5 years old, and he was my roommate's cousin or nephew or something. He hit his head diving into a pool, and he has some physical restrictions in his right hand and in his leg. And so it was kind of his nickname in school. They called him the Gimp because he walked with a limp. But it was not done out of hate. That just became his name, and he took that name, and he calls himself the Gimp from Hallowed. And his record label is called Hallowed Ground.
I'll tell you right now. That's kind of in hip hop. That's a running theme. Taking, something that was given to you, maybe even derisively, and using it as a, using it as a weapon against those who labeled you that.
That's right. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I'm going to own it. And you have no power over me. You have no power here. Walk away. And this is this. We're gonna have this conversation together on the episode too for our audience. But I've been looking at our catalog, and I've been looking at some of the stuff that we've done. And this show has been an experimental show, and we've tried a lot of things, and we've done a lot of things. And I've been looking back at some of those things, and I want to do some more of those things. Like we've done things where we did cover songs that don't suck, and we show the original and play a cover. I want to bring more of that back. We did an episode where you picked 3 soundtracks for movies, and I picked 3 soundtracks for movies. I want to do more of those. We did one episode called Get to Know Us, where we talked about our backstory, and you talked about growing up in the 80s. I talked about growing up in the 70s, kind of going down memory lane. Those were fun. So I feel like we're starting to fall into the trap where every episode we're reviewing something. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we've done a lot of experimental programming as well, and a lot of those segments I like. We're not getting enough feedback from listeners and viewers to hear what the audience likes, but I want to continue to not be the same show. And of course, I've been mentioning and threatening and promising interviews, and I've got a lot of interviews that I'm working on to get done, so I've been wanting to do interviews for a long time. I talked to my friend Alan Murphy today, who we had on a few times as one of our guests. And he wants to talk about Chat GPT thing, which is this new AI thing that everybody's going crazy about. And he's a very compelling, dynamic speaker. So when he's excited about something or not excited about something, it's still radio gold to listen to this guy talk about stuff. So we'll get Alan back on. But yeah, there's lots more stuff to do. And what I would say for those of you who are kind of new and coming in now, listen to the back catalog. We have a lot of interesting things that we've done. We've done a lot of experimental shows and tried different things and trying different content. And I'd like for people who have not maybe heard those or have not heard them in a while, give a few a listen, kind of skip through a few different episodes, and then give us some feedback and let us know what you did like and what you'd like to hear more of, or even better yet, give us suggestions for something we haven't done you'd like to see us do. And even better than that, if you want to come on and join us and talk about something, reach out and to be a guest on the show. Easiest way to do that, send us an email to the email address, which is show@ at culturegoespop.com or visit us on the web, culturegoespop.com, for links to all of our landing spots on the internet. Any final words, Scott T. Wilson?
No, I don't really have final words other
All right.
than goodbye. Those
All
are
right.
my final words this week.
Goodbye, and go watch Cocaine Bear, right? Some quality, wholesome entertainment. And check out The Mandalorian and catch up on season 1 and 2 and kick off season 3. Take care, everybody. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.